Hey, I'm PoxiiPro, and these are 10 beginner tips and tricks for Elden Ring Nighreign. These tips are going to be tailored for newer players to Nightreign, so with that in mind, there's going to be no boss spoilers. Every character in Nightreign does have different stat scaling, similar to how you scale in Elden Ring, and you can view that in the roundtable hold at the visual codex. If you go here and you go to characters, and you can see all the characters that you have unlocked here. These are all the base characters, so no spoilers, but essentially you can go down the list, and on the bottom right here in the attributes, you can see what they actually scale with. This is important because the weapons that you find in game are going to be scaling alongside these attributes, so you want to be kind of looking for items that make sense. So for this character, rank scaling is best for Wilder. For Iron Eye, you can probably assume, but dexterity is A scaling, so that's going to be really good for Iron Eye, and so on and so forth. Bosses and enemies in Nightreign have resistances and weaknesses just like they do in Elden Ring. Here on this little boss monster card, you can see effective, and you actually see this icon across, and that is the icon for holy damage. For quick communication while you're in game, sometimes it's hard to be like, hey, I'm over here, and it's like, hey, where's here? So you can actually ping yourself in game. So if you're on an item, from my controller scheme, you can see if I hold down Y here, it gives me some more options, and then if I do the left stick in, it'll ping it on the map, and then players can you can kind of like shout out like, hey, there's this item here for you to pick up, and I'll mark it for them to head over. And you can also ping yourself this way, so wherever I'm standing, if I hold down Y and then left stick, I can ping myself. So it's just a really good way to quickly ping your position or an item, which is, communication is always good for a team. If you're on mouse and keyboard, you can simply use X to ping. So right now I switched over to my mouse and keyboard, and X just kind of pings your location or an item. So usually in Elden Ring, when you use a flask, you have a limited amount until your next rest at a grace. But in this game, there's actually a 1-minute timer. So right now, if you're not at max, I have 2 out of 3. If you wait 1 minute, there'll be kind of like a sound cue that will notify you that your flask actually regenerated by 1. And this usually works if you're not engaging a boss. So I'm just standing here right now. And there you go, that little sound effect, you see some red on your person, and then you will see that my flask went up to 3 out of 3. A really good way to power up your character is to get talismans, which are pretty much just passive items that you can pick up, and they come from scarabs like this. This is kind of the main source of them and probably the most accessible. So if we go ahead and kill this scarab, it'll drop a little item, and you can see it's a talisman. It's a free little passive buff that doesn't take up a hand slot, so it's always good to have. So whenever you hear that little chiming, tingling, kind of like charm sound, I don't really know how to describe it, but it's kind of like a chime sound, like a sparkle almost, and that means that one of those scarabs are nearby. Alright, so for this tip, I'm going to try to speedrun through most, if not all, of the map icons to kind of give you a key. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with churches. This is what the church kind of looks like, and a lot of people like to prio them because when you travel to them, they have a altar that will give you an extra healing flask charge. So it's really useful for just kind of staying alive and sustaining. This one right here is a great church. It usually does have a lot of low-level enemies, so it's good for XP and sometimes a mini-boss. So I would say it's a really good low-level farming spot to try to power level. Next up, we have this Evergoals. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's kind of like this little circle icon. And these little areas are kind of the same from the base game. They can spawn a mini-boss, but I believe you need a 7-sword key to kind of exchange for spawning the mini-boss, and then you can go ahead and fight it for its goodies. Next up, we have forts. So this is what a fort looks like. Forts are going to be a lot stronger. They have a lot of loot, but there is a lot of mobs that you gotta fight. And they also have a treasure map, which can be really useful for you to reveal where talismans are, like the little scarab crabs are that drop talismans, and also reveals chests and other things on the map. So that allows you to kind of hit specific spots to get good loot. Next up, we have tunnels. So this is what the icon looks like here. In these tunnels, you can also farm these for smithing stones. There's a lot of different mobs underneath. It's kind of like an underground dungeon. So it's a good way to get smithing stones so that you don't have to pay for them in order to do your upgrades. Next up, we have runes. There's a lot of enemies and some good chance at loot, and usually some sort of mini boss. And next up, we have encampments, which look like this. This is kind of like the lower tier but higher difficulty place or POI that you can farm for loot and mobs. So I'd say it's in between the fort being the higher end, and then it's the encampments, and then probably lower tier stuff like the church. Next up, we have the township. This is a really good spawn for just having a merchant. and a smithing table. So if you really want to shop and upgrade things, and I believe the merchant at the township has an expanded inventory, you can go to this POI. Sometimes they also have different types of loot and like odd weapons, so definitely good to kind of swing by if you can. Next up, we have the Sorcerer's Rise, and this is really similar to how it is in the Elden Ring, the game, so you just need to break a seal by destroying like an imaginary or illusionary object, I guess, nearby, and then it'll kind of unlock it. And then, of course, I would say like much higher tier loot is going to be inside a castle. And in the castle, it's going to be a pretty strong dungeon, lots of enemies mixed in with like low level mobs, and lots of good loot. Definitely recommend maybe visiting it on day 2 rather than day 1. And there's several mini bosses that can also spawn here. Alright, so there's some bonus icons as well. So there's also field bosses that could spawn, and they're marked by a dragon head on the map. And usually these field bosses are pretty tough to fight, but they do drop some good rewards in exchange. And then we also have these spirit hawks. If you interact with one, they will kind of fly you across the map with a great distance. And if you do get unlucky, there is sometimes a archer on the map that will attempt to shoot you down. So keep that in mind, but it's good for fast traveling across the map if you need to. Alright, then there's also these spirit streams, and these streams are pretty much the ones that launch you up in the sky. So if you need to get up onto a fort really easily, sometimes there's a spirit stream nearby, or if you just need to get to some elevation, then you can run over to one of these. There's also going to be the scarab marker, but this only pops up once you get a map from a fort. There's also chests that will be revealed from the map that you get at a fort. And there's also sometimes merchant icons. And another good tip for the map stuff is that you can actually toggle extra details on your map. When you toggle these extra details, it'll actually show you what you can kind of find and what to expect at each of these POIs, which is super useful for narrowing down, especially if you're a certain character. Like if you are going to be playing the archer character, then you want to be going maybe to these POIs that have a bow icon there. Another tip about the codex at the round table hold, you'll also be able to eventually unlock a journal entry here. And in the journal, you'll be able to actually accept and kind of go through some backstory related quests to each character. So if you do like a character, definitely recommend starting the remembrance whenever you can, when it populates here, and then you'll get like a little side quest in game, and that'll allow you to just make your character stronger, and you get to learn some more lore. There's a match history here in case you're curious, so this is just like some extra info. You can see all your runs, if they were successful or not. So around the map, you'll be able to find a lot of various traders, and they actually give a good hint at what sort of items are going to be good against the boss. They tend to sell stuff that's tailored towards defeating the boss, so you can go ahead and check their items and see if there's anything useful. So you can see there's some holy magic. A lot of this is holy magic spells. The rest of them are kind of physical, and there's some other variety. And for the next tip, at these trader areas, you can usually spend stones to upgrade your weapons, and usually you can buy these stones from the shopkeep, about 6,500 for these tier 1 smithing stones, but you can actually find stones from loot if you go to these sort of cave icons. They're like little dungeons. You go underground, you can clear the area, and usually get smithing stones that way, and if you defeat the boss, it'll usually drop some smithing stones as well. So definitely, if you're interested in upgrading a weapon that you have, I would try to take the route of going and clearing a mine instead of spending your souls or money on smithing stones here. So this one is a pretty crucial tip that I think a lot of people don't realize when they first start, and that is these gear that you have in your hand actually have passives on all of them, and they don't only apply if you have it in hand. So usually in Elden Ring, the original game, you kind of only benefit from whatever weapons that you're wielding. So for example, this katana, if I switch to it, or the scimitar, but in this one, each of them have a passive effect that you can gain the benefits from. So this is super important for making your character stronger early and kind of finalizing your build. So even though I'm not using this dex scaling weapon because it's not as good for my character, it still gives me this ability, and I can go ahead and look at the details here. So this gives me a benefit to Dexterity and Arcane, not too helpful for my build, but still good to go ahead and stack these. Like this one gives me extra FP upon receiving damage. And one thing to note with these is there is an exception. So right here, if it has this little red hand icon on it, that means it does need to be in a hand slot. So it doesn't need to be in your main hand, it can just be in your offhand as well. So let's say I wanted that benefit, I could switch to it like this, and then I could dual wield or two-hand my main sword, and I would still get the benefit of the FP restoration upon attacks. If you go to statuses, you can see all the stuff here, so we can see the special effects, and you can see on the right side there's the little white hand icon, which means I'm benefiting from it. So I get the FP restoration upon attacks, got all these other special effects I'm stacking, and here in the armaments section, you can also see all of the weapons that I have in my inventory, and it tells you which one's dealing the best damage. So just off a quick glance, you can kind of see from this that my main sword is dealing 88, which is really good. Alrighty, that's going to be 10 tips and tricks for Elden Ring Nighreign for beginner players. Hopefully you found the video helpful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks, and until next time.